Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, our mission is pretty focused. We're teeing off on what might be the biggest tech shift in golf instruction right now. We're talking about moving away from, that standard 2D video analysis everyone's used for years,
Right.
and diving into these advanced 3D motion capture systems. If you follow golf, especially the modern game, precision is just everything. Whether it's chasing extra yards or maybe trying to figure out why your back always hurts after a round. Well, analyzing how the body moves needs to be super exact. We're digging into the sources today to show why maybe the old way isn't quite enough anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, 2D video has been around for decades, right? And it was fine, it served a purpose, but honestly, it only ever gave you part of the picture. You could see an angle here or there, but you couldn't really feel the sequence or, pinpoint where the power leaks were happening. Now you've got these systems, often powered by AI, think things like the Sportsbox AI 3D app or these new AI golf chatbots, and they're delivering really complex, almost lab-level swing diagnostics straight to coaches, straight to players. It's becoming the new standard, really.
Okay, let's unpack that. We hear 2D versus 3D thrown around a lot. But what are the actual fundamental technical differences? Why is 2D limited when you're trying to measure something as dynamic as a golf swing?
Fundamentally, it really just boils down to geometry. Simple as that. Think about 2D analysis. You've got a basic camera, maybe two. It's cost-effective, it's quick, sure, but the big limitation is that it's stuck observing on a flat plane. You get a view from the front or maybe one from the side down the line. So yeah, you can measure some general things, knee bend, posture angles, limb positions. Okay, but you get absolutely zero data on rotation or depth. It's kind of like trying to figure out a really complex engine issue just by looking at a slightly blurry photo of the car's front bumper. You might see something is there, but you miss the entire mechanism, right? The twisting, the timing, the forces.
Right, so if a golfer is, say, really rotating their pelvis powerfully or shifting their weight side to side,
Yeah.
a 2D system just kind of flattens that whole movement at the background. It misses the 3D reality of it.
That's precisely the issue. That's the critical flaw. Now, 3D motion capture, on the other hand, it records movement in all three dimensions. Sagittal, that's forward and back, frontal side to side, and transverse, that's your rotation. Having that complete holistic view, well, that changes everything. And what's really cool now is the AI integration. These systems don't just record the data. They use machine learning to instantly calculate metrics that, frankly, 2D couldn't even begin to measure.
Okay, so what are these crucial metrics? The ones 3D nails down that 2D misses? Because that sounds like the real secret sauce for, performance games and maybe even injury prevention. These aren't just simple angles anymore.
Exactly. We're finally getting visibility into the movements that truly generate power. And just as importantly, the ones that can lead to injury. Think about rotation. We can track pelvis rotation, how much and how fast. Pelvis side bend, too. We can measure torso rotation accurately, and that all-important X-factor stretch, the separation between hips and shoulders that stores energy. If a player looks like they swing fast, but maybe they leak power, 3D shows us exactly when they might be firing their hips too early or maybe too late in the sequence. We're measuring torque, actual twisting force. We're measuring the timing of the kinematic sequence, dynamic balance, and we're getting this for all the key joints in all three dimensions. If you get the timing sequence wrong, you've basically missed the core inefficiency of the whole swing.
It sounds incredibly comprehensive. 3D can track pretty much everything. But the big question is, does it track it accurately? And how much better is it really than that old 2D standard?
Right.
We need some science here, right? You could just say it's better. You need to show that the data difference is actually significant.
Absolutely, and that's why the scientific validation is key. There was a relevant comparative study done. They took 26 recreationally active adults and had them do a single leg squat, the SLS task. Now, this is a common functional test in sports medicine because it challenges balance and stability in multiple directions, not just forward and back. And the researchers compared the data they got from standard 2D video analysis versus a full 3D motion capture setup during the same movement.
Interesting. So what did that basic 2D view miss, even on something seemingly simpler than a golf swing?
Well, the results were pretty revealing. They found that the 2D and 3D measurements were, yes, moderately to strongly correlated, but only in the sagittal plane. So for straightforward forward and backward movements, like measuring how much the trunk bent forward or the knee flex, 2D was okay-ish. But, and this is the crucial part, they diverged significantly when looking at the frontal plane. That's the side-to-side movement. 2D systems really struggle to accurately capture things like dynamic knee valgus.
Hold on, dynamic knee valgus. For listeners who aren't biomechanics experts, what is that exactly? And why does it matter if 2D misses it?
Right, good question. Dynamic knee valgus is basically when the knee collapses inward during a movement like squatting or landing. You've probably seen it. It's a major visible red flag for potential knee instability and injury risk across almost all sports. And the study showed that 2D methods just had a really hard time measuring this lateral frontal plane movement accurately, especially calculating the true angle changes in 3D space.
Wow. Okay, so if these systems already show significant differences on a relatively controlled single-leg squat, then connecting that to the much more violent, complex, multiplanar movement of a golf swing seems, well, pretty critical. Because a golf swing isn't just forward and back, right? It's this intense mix of rotation and lateral shifting.
Exactly. That discrepancy seen in the study, it has huge implications for analyzing golf. Think about those complex, often injury-related movements in golf. Side bend, lateral weight shifts, how the pelvis tilts. These happen primarily in the frontal and transverse planes, the very planes where 2D struggles. So you simply can't measure the risk associated with these movements accurately if you don't capture the full 3D geometry of the load.
Okay, can you give us a really concrete, maybe even a slightly scary example? A specific golf movement that 2D might miss, but has documented serious injury implications.
Yeah, certainly. A classic one is excessive right side bend at impact. This is a move many powerful golfers use the sources, even mention players like Will Zalatoris as examples of significant side bend. Now, from a 2D camera angle, depending on where it's placed, this might look okay, or even be somewhat hidden. You don't see the extent of it. But 3D analysis shows this specific movement pattern is directly linked to significant stress on the lumbar spine. We're talking compression forces, particularly around the L4, L5 discs. You can't diagnose that risk, you can't quantify it, you can't work to mitigate it if you can't accurately measure that side bend and the resulting compression in 3D space. So a coach relying solely on 2D could, completely unintentionally, be letting their player groove a movement that's setting them up for a serious back injury down the line, maybe even surgery.
Okay, but hang on. Let me push back a little here. For the average golfer, maybe the recreational player who gets out once a week, is TD really that bad? If I'm just paying, say, $50 for a lesson, do I truly need L4, L5 spinal compression data? Is this 3D stuff absolutely essential for everyone, or is it maybe a bit of tech overkill outside the pro ranks?
That's a totally fair question. And look, for just getting a general idea, maybe 2D offers something, but I'd argue the stakes are still high, even for amateurs. If you're a serious weekend golfer, maybe spending good money on clubs, green fees, lessons, you want consistency, right? You want to improve. And that's where 2D's inability to properly track those rotations and sequences becomes a real limitation, even for amateurs. See, 3D analysis helps prevent compensations. When a golfer is inconsistent, often the body finds ways to cheat. Maybe the upper body starts overworking to make up for poor lower body movement or timing. This doesn't just lead to inconsistent shots. It often leads directly to those overuse injuries we were just talking about. Back pain, elbow issues, shoulder problems, even at the amateur level.
Okay, let's make it really practical then. Give me an example. What specific common performance issue can a coach diagnose with 3D that they were basically just guessing at with 2D? Say a player has a chronic hook, or maybe they block everything right. What timing flaw might 3D reveal that 2D would completely miss?
Great example. With 3D, the coach can see precisely why the club path is off. So, take that persistent hook. It's often linked to the hips spinning open too early, too fast in the downswing sequence relative to the torso and arms. In 2D, the coach might just see fast hips and tell the player, okay, slow your hips down, which might not be the right fits at all. But in 3D, we get the actual kinematic sequence data. We see the numbers. We see, the pelvis's peak rotational velocity is happening, say, 50 milliseconds before the torso hits its peak rotation. That timing mismatch is causing the club to approach the ball too much from the inside, leading to the hook. So the fix isn't just slow down. The precise fix might be, we need to adjust how you initiate the downswing, maybe feeling the torso start slightly earlier to get the sequence right. It allows for incredibly precise coaching. They can figure out if power loss is due to poor ground interaction or maybe just not loading that X factor stretch effectively, things 2D can't quantify.
That definitely sounds powerful, but it also sounds like something you'd need a dedicated biomechanics lab for, or maybe one of those elite tour player performance centers. Which brings us back to that accessibility point. How is this actually getting into the hands of, your local club pro or a competitive junior golfer's coach?
Yeah, and that's been the huge breakthrough recently, particularly with the integration of AI. This isn't confined to labs with wires and sensors everywhere anymore.
Yep.
Systems like Sportsbox AI, for instance, allow coaches to capture this 3D data using just the camera on a standard smartphone. The AI algorithms can analyze the movement from that single video feed and reconstruct the 3D motion.
Okay, But you mentioned AI golf chatbots earlier. That term gets thrown around a lot. How does a chatbot give you a 3D analysis? That sounds a bit odd.
Right, good clarification. The chatbot itself isn't doing the 3D motion capture. The specialized 3D app, like Sportsbox, captures the swing data using the phone's camera and its AI models. The chatbot then acts as the instant interpreter and the delivery system for that complex data. So it takes those millions of 3D data points, the degrees of hip rotation, the velocity curves, the side bend forces, and it processes them immediately. Then it can provide a simple customized coaching cue or compare the swing to a model or highlight the biggest issue. Essentially, it cuts out the time a coach might normally spend poring over complex graphs and charts. It makes the actionable feedback almost instantaneous and much easier to understand.
Ah, okay. That makes sense. So it dramatically lowers the barrier to entry, which means these advanced diagnostics are suddenly useful for a much wider range of golfers, not just the pros.
Absolutely. Think across the entire spectrum of players. For junior golfers, it's huge. They can learn biomechanically sound, safe, efficient movements right from the start before potentially harmful compensations get ingrained. For seniors, maybe their goal is injury prevention, maintaining mobility, maybe safely picking up a few extra yards. 3D can pinpoint exactly where they can make adjustments without putting undue stress on their joints. And then, of course, for competitive amateurs and pros, it provides those critical marginal gains. It helps manage injury risk with precision, allowing them to train harder and perform better under pressure. It really shifts the whole process from subjective observation to objective measurement.
Okay, so to quickly wrap up this deep dive then, it seems clear the move from 2D video to 3D motion capture isn't just an incremental upgrade. It's more like a fundamental transformation in understanding and teaching the golf swing. It offers a depth of analysis, a level of precision, and frankly, an injury prevention capability that just wasn't possible before. Investing in or utilizing 3D tech seems less about just having the latest gadget and more about genuinely transforming potential performance and safeguarding health.
It really does change the entire conversation around movement, health, and efficiency in the sport. And maybe this leads to a final thought for you, the listener, to mull over. Given that this kind of accessible 3D technology can now so precisely link specific, sometimes quite subtle biomechanical patterns like that excessive side bend we talked about to significant medical issues like L4, L5 compression, what might the future applications be for this kind of motion capture technology in, say, general health? In preventative medicine, moving well beyond just optimizing a golf swing or sports performance, what else could we measure and improve?